How did you end up in the same room as Saddam Hussein? And am I right in thinking you had to pretend to be Swedish just to get in that room?
Yeah, yeah. I was aware. I guess seconded when Saddam Hussein was in power. Obviously, he invaded Kuwait, and then he did it again. And we had what we called Optelic, which started. Let me think. That was 2003, and so obviously there was large coalition forces, predominantly led by America, but we had rather substantial contingent there as well. And but prior to that, uh, Saddam had a lot of sanctions from the United Nations on Iraq. He wasn't allowed to fly any aircraft above the 33rd or below the 33rd parallel or above the 36th parallel. So he couldn't. So if Western forces were flying missions monitoring what was going on in Iraq, he wasn't really allowed to respond to them or be threatening or do anything that could harm the Kurdish population in northern Iraq or the Shia population in southern Iraq in the marshlands, because they had previous instances of him doing criminal activity there, basically, and really harming those populations of different nations, really. The Kurds are a separate entity. They're not Arab, they're Kurd. And the Shia population are Arab, but Saddam and the ruling Ba'ath Party is a Sunni Muslim. And he really didn't like Shia that much because he had an 8-year war with Iran in the 1980s. Iran is predominantly Shia Muslim. So there's a lot of sort of religious ideology behind all that type of stuff as well. But I was seconded into the United Nations Special Commission. UNSCOM is the abbreviation for it, as it was then. And that was 97 and 98. And we had my first operation in there. We had a UN safe house. Our main building was in Bahrain. And then we'd fly in to Baghdad or an air base just south of Baghdad. And on the Hercules flight in, so we had a United Nations or white Hercules with UN on the side, which was private, wasn't military, it was a private Hercules flown in. And as we were flying in, it's noisy on the back of a Herc, got our headphones on, but we had little microphones on. We were discussing because we all came together. There was different teams that were flying in, and there was three Terps interpreters, so Terp for short, so the slang we use for it. And one of the guys was from Lebanon. One of the other guys was from Tunisia. So they're both Arabs. So they're native speaking Arabs, okay? And I was coming in as another Terp, but I'm the British guy who's also a Terp. And as we were at the airport in Bahrain, ready to take off, it came through that Saddam had banned American and British UN personnel from being in Iraq. There was a bit of a political standoff over access to his palaces, etc., etc. And we thought, well, we're on the aircraft now. But we had a bit of an epiphany a few days prior to that. And one of my American colleagues was born in Mexico, so his place of birth was Mexico, but he was subsequently an American citizen. So on our UN passports, he put Mexico, and I'm a Welshman, so I've got Wales. So it said Wales, didn't say UK, it says Wales. So we just thought, well, the worst thing that can happen is say you get back on the aircraft and we fly back to Bahrain straight away. They go, you're not coming in and get lost. So we tried our luck. And as we landed at this air base, it's called Habaniya, it's a big air base, it's massive. And we landed there and they had this security customs guys there and you're getting off. But we had already agreed that I wasn't going to speak any Arabic because I don't look as if I know the language. And I agreed that I would be known as Dr. Paul and that I was a specialist. I was a gastroenterologist. And you do a bit of medical stuff when you're in the military and everything else. So I had a very Wikipedia understanding of physiological sort of stuff. Yeah, I could do medic stuff and all the rest of it, but I was nowhere near a doctor. But we thought we'll chance it and see what happens because the overall guy in charge of NSCOM said to me, he said, they won't expect you to understand what's going on. So just stay passive and see what's going on. and listen and see what they're planning. So anyway, we landed on this base, went to the customs place, and we were one of the first to be seen. And we were in this long queue, and they were just stamping the passport, looking up at you, say something in, very simple English, shouting at you really, stamp the passport, and in you go. And they're quite intimidating. And this guy looks at me, and we got the unscum polo shirt on, and I had you could either have a baseball cap, a blue United Nations baseball cap, or you could have like a floppy cowboy hat type style you could pull up, a bit like Crocodile Dundee type stuff, yeah. And I had a blue one of them, but mine was sort of flopping down, so I looked like a bit of a cowboy. And this guy looked at me, I was like, you could see his complete disdain for me, and he went, Wales, and I went, yeah. He went, Wayne Wales, which is where's Wales? I went, Wales. He goes, Wales, Wales. I went, Sweden. And he went, oh, stamp the passport. And I went. So obviously being 6'4" and blonde helped, and everything else, and looking a bit whimsical in my floppy hat type thing. I don't know. But yeah, so in I got. So we were literally in, and we were in Baghdad, and the operation we started doing our stuff the following day. And immediately it was apparent that they didn't expect me to understand Arabic. And so we had minders that were with us wherever we went, and we're called NMD, which stands for National Monitoring Directorate. And they were Ba'ath Party aficionados, so Saddam henchmen basically, but they're from Republican Guard, which is his hardcore of soldiers, really, his elite core of soldiers. And they were, they were mean people. They gave off that air. They could tell that they were nails, and but they were chatting around and quite happily discussing organizing demonstrations, getting students involved, move that here, do this there, and they were trying to find out where we were going days in advance and trying to talk to us, or trying to put different devices to find things on us and all sorts of things. So it was quite funny, but I think they got a bit like, well, how the hell do they know? They must have thought they had a mole in them amongst their own group or not. I don't know. It was just me. They were just chatting around me like crazy, and I can do a real good thick look quite easy, and I look as if I'm not even paying attention. Sit there, scratch my ass, or flip and do whatever, and they just started talking around me. So that helped massively, and it wasn't. I eventually got found out, but it was a few months after, and
Oh,
so that was different.
man, that is such just a crazy story. Now, I've viewed you in the past, and I appreciate the metaphor here because I'm a big fan of Harry Potter. But I've heard you describe Saddam Hussein's aura as being similar to the Dementors in Harry Potter. If you could even begin to describe it, how would you describe the aura of Saddam Hussein?
On that first day. So we literally got through. We were chuckling that we were in Baghdad, and we got through the customs type thing. So myself and the American colleague that I had with me, and we went to our headquarters, which is it's called the Canal Hotel, because it was the Canal Hotel, and it'd been sort of commandeered by the United Nations. So it was half UNSCOM and half UNICEF. And we got there, we dumped our bags off, etc., etc., and then we were just grabbing some quick scrans, some quick scoff, food down our neck and everything else, and getting some water on board. And the message came through: you need to get across to like their equivalent of the Home Office, which is just across the Tigris River. And so we got there, went across, and there's quite a few of us went across. There's must have been about dozen Jeeps went across. So we all had like Land Cruisers or Nissan Patrols and Jeep Cherokee, that type of stuff. And we all went across, and there was two new teams that came in, and there was other teams that were there. So there's about 50 of us in total. And we're in this big auditorium type thing, and it's quite imposing when you go into these buildings because they're ornate. There's big, oil paintings of Saddam Hussein everywhere, big gold pillars and all sorts of stuff. We got filed in, and the Republican Guard guys are there as well. So, and they don't look half-assed. They are pucker soldiers, these guys, right? They are, very skilled. And we went into this auditorium, sat down, and the word went round because we had a head inspector with us, a Russian guy. We had a guy called Richard Butler, who had previously the week before been speaking to the Russian foreign secretary who had been in Baghdad and all sorts of stuff. So he was a big player, and you'd see him routinely on the news, on BBC, CNN, that type of stuff. So it was really funny meeting him for the first time. So he was in the front row, and other guys, and I was towards the back. So I could see everybody else's reaction as well. And the whisper went round that the Iraqi foreign secretary was coming out, foreign minister, called a guy called Tariq Aziz, which I was intrigued to see because he speaks really brilliant English, and he's a Christian. He's not a Muslim, so he's a Masihi, as they call it in Arabic. Which comes from Messiah, obviously the word. So Masihi is Christian. So I was intrigued to see him, and then all of a sudden you could just feel the atmosphere changing, and you could see the guards really putting to attention, tensing up, and all the rest of it. And it was just you could feel like a cold in the room. And then Saddam walks in, and it is Saddam. And we were told about doppelgangers and all sorts of stuff. I'm flipping on, mate. I've never, I was never been so scared in my life. You could feel it, and your hairs were just standing on the. I could physically see the hairs on the guys in front of me, and we had some tough cookies with us, right? And it was like flipping, Nora, this is surreal. And Saddam came in, and he had an interpreter alongside. He had Tariq Aziz as well, and he just held a press conference basically and bollocked the UN, and he was giving it large. And we were just there going, flipping out, oh my God, what if he now launches and realizes that there's two Westerners in the room as well, who shouldn't be here, as he found out, and all this is going through in the back of your mind, thinking, "Oh, crikey, we could, oh, fine, what the hell's going to happen here?" But he left, and that was it. But it was, and Harry Potter wasn't out then. But when you see Harry Potter and the Dementors whizzing around the room, it was that kind of. I've seen some yucky stuff around the globe, but I've never felt evil like that, and it really was intense.